The house held its breath, an eerie stillness enveloping it as the moments ticked by, waiting for the arrival of guests. I navigated the rooms with purpose, each step echoing the anticipation of an impending encounter with someone significant, though their identity eluded me, slipping through my fingers like sand. Years had slipped by since I last laid eyes on him, back when he was just a teenager, lost in the chaos of finding his place in the world, wrestling with the question of who he truly was. I had been told he was a man now, older and transformed, yet I couldn't shake the memory of how he used to gaze at me, not with the innocence of a child, but with the intensity of someone seeking to unravel a forbidden mystery. I tidied the guest room 3 times that day, not due to any mess, but because restlessness coursed through me. I traced my fingers along the shelf's edge, where his backpack once rested during those sun-soaked summer visits. The air was thick with the scent of fresh linen, new sheets whispering of new beginnings perhaps. I selected a mug from the depths of the kitchen cabinet, an aged relic adorned with a faded green rim, whispering stories of the past. It wasn't until I set it down on the table that I discovered it was his favorite. As he arrived, time seemed to stretch infinite. As my husband swung the door open, I lingered in the darkness of the hallway, cloaked in shadow, my heart racing with anticipation. With a determined stride, I advanced into the unknown. He loomed larger, his frame imposing, each movement deliberate and controlled. His eyes mirrored the same hue, yet now they held a piercing intensity, a keen awareness that seemed to dissect everything in their path. He wrapped his arms around me, a polite embrace, and said, "You look good." I smiled back, offering a vague response that hung in the air between us. Yet, a silence hung in the air, a pause thick with unspoken tension, where 2 souls stand on the brink, aware they've crossed an invisible line long before uttering a single word. Dinner unfolded like a gripping play. My husband spun the familiar tales once more, each word echoing like a haunting refrain. I listened intently, nodding at the right moments, feigning laughter when the situation called for it. Yet, across the table, his gaze lingered on me, subtle, yet unmistakably aware. As I lifted the fork to my lips, it quivered with anticipation. I convinced myself it was just the wine. As the evening wore on, and the flickering images of an old film danced in the living room, I slipped away to the bathroom, seeking a moment of solitude. I lingered before the mirror, captivated by my own reflection. The harsh light cast unflattering shadows, yet I examined my reflection with a chilling sense of detachment. The delicate creases around my eyes, the gentle touch of time's passage. Not in a negative sense, just in a way that feels unfamiliar. My fingers glided over the delicate curve of my neck, tracing the line of my collarbone. Beauty was the last thing on my mind. I was on a quest for a sensation long forgotten, a feeling that had eluded me for years. Desperation gnawed at the edges of his mind, a relentless ache that consumed him from within. Thump, a flicker ignites. I crawled into bed early, my head pounding with a relentless ache. The truth was, I couldn't bear to be trapped between them on that couch for another second. The stark difference between what I had and what I dared not envision grew deafening, even in the stillness. As I lay in bed, the years slipped away unnoticed, leaving me to ponder the contours of my own body hidden beneath the sheets. My husband had a kindness that was undeniable. He existed. Yet, kindness does not equate to longing. Comfort lacks the intensity of fire. Long ago I had given up on anything more than a fleeting goodnight kiss, and the steady rise and fall of breath beside me. The dawn broke, and I found myself awake long before the sun had fully risen. I lingered over my clothes, not to impress anyone, but to ignite a change within myself. I chose a blouse long forgotten, its fabric whispering secrets as it caught the light. The scent enveloped me, just a whisper, barely enough to sense its looming presence. As I stepped into the kitchen, he stood there, barefoot, cradling a steaming cup of coffee. Morning light poured through the window, creating a golden halo that danced across the wooden floor. His gaze flickered to me, then to the mug cradled in his hand, the one I had chosen. A faint smile tugged at his lips. Just seconds later, my husband stepped into the room, shattering the fragile moment we had shared. We exchanged words about errands, the shifting weather, and the anticipation of weekend plans. Yet my thoughts wandered, piecing together moments. The arc of his forearm as he grasped the spoon, the deepening of his voice when he murmured good morning, the subtle stubble on his chin that marked his transformation from boyhood. All day, I drifted through the house, a restless spirit seeking refuge, yet I remained tethered to the sound of his footsteps, my eyes scanning the windows for a glimpse of his reflection. I wondered if it was merely nostalgia, a warped whisper from days gone by. Yet, nostalgia fails to tighten your gut. Your breath remains steady as someone glides by in the hallway. Sleep eluded me that night. With each step on the cool floor, I made my way to the kitchen, thirst gnawing at me, yearning for water, for clarity, for anything to quench the restless ache inside. He stood there once more, bare-chested, partially facing the gaping fridge. His gaze locked onto mine in the shadows, and an electric connection surged between us. Silence reigned. Only heat, silently. I turned and slipped away into the shadows. In the stillness of the night, I lay in bed, my hand pressed firmly against my chest. Heat radiated from my skin. My pulse thunders, a silent rebellion within. With my eyes shut tight, I surrendered to the enveloping silence, allowing it to propel me into the unknown. Awake, yet ensnared by an unfamiliar, haunting desire that had lain dormant for years. A yearning that terrified me more than any truth I had ever dared to confront. In that moment, a chilling realization washed over me. This was only the start. The morning slipped through my fingers, leaving me in a haze of confusion and disorientation. My body stirred, sensing the call to awaken, yet my mind clung stubbornly to the shadows of sleep. My head pounded, a relentless reminder that the night had not been one of rest, but rather a tumultuous journey through an inner tempest. I lay motionless, eyes fixed on the ceiling, anticipating a change in the stillness around me. Silence enveloped the house, thick and heavy, as if it held its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. He was gone, leaving only silence in his wake. He always slipped away at dawn, lost in the depths of his own reality. We had drifted into our own rhythms long ago, not through conflict, but through a silent acceptance of our fate. I crept down the stairs, my bare feet whispering against the cool surface, each step deliberate and cautious. The kitchen was filled with a refreshing chill, the windows cracked just enough to let in the whisper of the outside world. A folded newspaper lay on the table, accompanied by a note from my husband. Vanished for a few days. The conference has been extended. The fridge holds lunch, waiting in silence. It was all too familiar, a scene played out countless times before. There was no trace of anger within me for him. He was neither cruel nor distant. He was hauntingly absent in ways that cut deeper than either of us dared to acknowledge. The aroma of bitter coffee enveloped me, anchoring my senses. Just as I pivoted, he entered the room, still caught in the haze of sleep, clad in a t-shirt and loose sweatpants. His hair lay in disarray, stubble shadowing his jaw. He appeared so unguarded, it felt almost intimate, too vivid for these walls. Too vivid for these walls. Overwhelmingly vibrant. "Good morning," he said, his eyes narrowing against the bright glare of the sun. I nodded, striving for a calm facade, yet his gaze lingered on me, sending shivers across my bare skin. Subtle yet powerful. Subtle yet powerful. Perfectly acceptable. Fully charged. Doubt gnawed at me. Was he toying with me? Or was it all just a figment of my imagination? A desperate woman, yearning for the spotlight. But why had I picked this specific bra that morning? What compelled me to stand before the mirror, tracing my fingertip along my waist? It wasn't meant for him. Not for him. Yet, there lingered a part of me that craved the sensation of being alive. The day unraveled in eerie fragments of time. The air crackled between us, thick with unspoken words and electric tension. The late morning sun sliced through the air, casting bold stripes across the wooden porch as I swept, each stroke a dance with the light. He emerged into the open, ready to lend a hand. I turned them down softly. He remained unbothered, settling onto the steps, leaning back on his hands, and staring up at the vast sky. It was a seemingly mundane gesture, yet it held a weight that lingered in the air. Yet witnessing his actions ignited a profound feeling within. The contours of his arms, the curve of his chest beneath the fabric. Fragments that clung to my thoughts unwelcome and intrusive, and yet they stood before me, I convinced myself it was all in my head. This couldn't possibly be real. It was impossible. Yet denial proves futile as your body responds instinctively, long before your mind can voice its objections. As dusk settled, I uncorked a bottle of deep red wine, the rich aroma swirling in the air. A daring, aged vintage we had preserved for years, without any specific purpose. A bottle crafted for a celebration of a day that was still a dream on the horizon. This day had an unmistakable weight to it. "Care for a glass?" I inquired, my voice unwavering. He gave a slight nod, a silent agreement that hung in the air, heavy with unspoken tension. We returned to the porch, the air thick with anticipation. The light outside melted into a warm, golden hue. Soft melodies filled the air. Something ancient, a melody without lyrics, just the piano's notes swirling around us like the very air we breathed. We exchanged words, yet it was just a whisper. The sky darkened, clouds swirling ominously as the wind howled through the trees. A storm was brewing, and the air crackled with tension, hinting at the chaos to come. The heart of the city pulsed with life. Figures who had faded into the shadows of our past. Yet the silence between the words pulsed with unvoiced secrets. He listened to me with an intensity I hadn't felt in years. Not with courtesy, with an undeniable aura. His silence enveloped me, grounding me while unraveling my very core. As I rose to depart, he mirrored my movement, standing tall beside me, almost there, too close for comfort. I stood my ground. His hand brushed against mine, an electric moment that lingered gently, poised on the edge of anticipation, bracing for the sting of denial. I remained frozen in place. We exchanged glances, not filled with shock or fear, but with the haunting weight of those who had irrevocably crossed a line. In that moment, his lips brushed against mine. It unfolded with a calm certainty, unhurried and deliberate. It was intentional. Softly, the world whispered around her, cradling her in a tender embrace. Each moment unfolded like a delicate petal, revealing the beauty hidden within the ordinary. The air was thick with warmth, and the light danced playfully, casting shadows that told stories of their own. In this serene haven, time seemed to pause, inviting her to linger just a little longer, to savor the sweetness of life's gentle touch. A kiss lingered, posing a question I was unprepared to answer, yet couldn't bring myself to reject. My body reacted with an alarming swiftness, almost as if it had a mind of its own. Blood surged in my ears, a deafening roar that drowned out everything else. A warmth spread through me, awakening something deep inside. It had been years since I felt a kiss that electrified my very soul. Not as a wife, not as an obligation, but as a hidden truth waiting to be uncovered. I was the one to break free first. Neither guilt nor shame drove the action. Pure instinct. I stepped inside, my legs trembling, my breath hitching in my throat. The air inside was suffocating, pressing down like a weight on the chest. Closer. I rushed into the bathroom, my heart pounding as I faced my reflection once more. Not with judgment, but with a sense of deep loss. My fingers brushed against my lips, igniting a spark of sensation. A shiver ran through them. The memory haunted me. I resisted the urge. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, eyes wide, gazing into the abyss as my skin thrummed with echoes of the past. My husband never crossed my mind. It wasn't a lack of love that drove me away. It was the undeniable presence of someone else in this house. In just 2 days, they had awakened a part of me that had been dormant for years, making me feel more alive than ever before. This was clarity in chaos. This was no mere coincidence. A new chapter was unfolding before me. Beginnings, I discovered, often carry shadows of the past. The morning unfolded in a silence so profound it seemed to weigh down the very air, as if the night had infused it with an unsettling thickness. I lingered in bed, enveloped by the house's distant whispers, the refrigerator's steady hum, the soft footsteps from below, and the occasional thud of a cabinet shutting, each sound weaving a tapestry of the morning's quiet tension. The world moved on, yet within me, time stood still. The ghost of his kiss lingered, a smoldering ember beneath my skin. It wasn't a kiss that left a mark. but one that etched itself into the nerves, nestled in the folds of memory, resurfacing at the most inconvenient moments. In the dead of night, I found myself jolted awake time and again, the lingering sensation of that moment haunting me like an unshakable whisper. As I descended the stairs, I found the air thick with an unsettling politeness, a tension that hung like a veil over the room. He sat at the table, coffee in hand, eyes glued to his phone, exuding a practiced calm that sent ripples of doubt through my mind. Did it hold less significance for him? Or was he, like me, feigning normalcy, trapped in the silence of uncertainty, unsure of how to confront the truth that loomed between us? I brewed the tea, each motion automatic, yet charged with an electric awareness. The fabric of my robe whispered against my legs. The water's furious boil filled the silence, and I could feel the pulse in my throat thrumming like a drum. Every sensation heightened, every part of me alive with intensity. I remained silent before him. I was unable to, not at that moment. The facade of tranquility shattered swiftly. It was mid-morning when my husband's call pierced the stillness. He proposed a suggestion, a sudden spark of inspiration he deemed utterly romantic. "Let's escape to the lake house," he urged, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Just the three of us, to breathe in the fresh air and embrace a new landscape. It promises to be beneficial for everyone involved." I should have turned away. An excuse should have been at the tip of my tongue. But my moment of hesitation stretched into eternity, and that was all it took. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, we hurriedly packed our bags, anticipation crackling in the air. I observed my hands moving with a strange detachment as I packed folded clothes into a small suitcase, a blouse that felt impossibly soft, a dress that clung too tight. I found myself selecting items not for their comfort, but for their appearance, as if I were gearing up for an event far beyond a simple family weekend. The drive to the lake house was a hushed affair, punctuated solely by my husband's musings on roadwork, the shifting weather, and the melodies drifting from the radio. I perched in the passenger seat, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror far too often. He lingered in the shadows of the back seat, eyes fixed on the world beyond the glass, one arm casually draped over the edge, lost in thought. His expression was a mystery, calm and unreadable, betraying no hint of nerves. Yet, with every subtle shift of my shoulder, every glance at my lap or the world beyond the window, his presence crackled against my skin like a live wire. And the lake house stood unchanged, its creaky steps whispering secrets, rusted wind chimes swaying like ghosts in the breeze. The air was thick with the lingering scent of pine and the whispers of aged furniture. The air was thick with echoes of the past. Amidst the sizzling aroma of family barbecues, the sound of raindrops tapping against the window, and the soft glow of quiet evenings filled with books and board games, life unfolds in a tapestry of cherished moments, a sanctuary that had once promised solace. We slipped into our familiar rhythm, the roles we played weaving seamlessly around us. As my husband scrubbed the fireplace, I busied myself with the groceries, the scent of fresh produce mingling in the air. Together we moved in harmony, his strong hands bringing in the wood, each log a promise of warmth for the evening ahead. Everything appeared ordinary, yet an undercurrent pulsed with an intensity that demanded attention. At dinner, the three of us gathered around the table, weaving tales and laughter that danced in the air, a fleeting glimpse of something real. I watched them intently, observing the stark contrast between them. My husband's voice, calm and reassuring, carried a weight that felt both comforting and strangely distant. His eyes held a kindness, yet they seemed to gaze past me, as if I were merely a shadow in his world. Suddenly, the younger man leaned in, elbows resting on the table, his eyes sparkling with a flicker of recognition. After dinner, I slipped into the kitchen, the solitude wrapping around me like a shroud. As I scrubbed the dishes, my fingers lingered under the warm water, lost in thought, each drop a moment stretching into eternity. "Wow, gosh." The floorboards creaked ominously behind me, and I felt no need to look back. I already knew it was him. Silence enveloped him. He lingered just behind me, a breath away yet far enough to amplify the tension in the air, making the distance between us feel suffocating. I wiped my hands with deliberate slowness. My breath came in ragged gasps, a telltale sign of the turmoil within me. I grabbed a towel and spun around, startled to see him standing much nearer than I had anticipated, our eyes locked in a silent exchange. His gaze held no hint of playfulness or flirtation. The silence hung heavy, a weighty tension in the air. His thoughts were a mystery, and I was too afraid to uncover them. I sidestepped, our bodies grazing in the cramped kitchen, the air thick with tension. In that fleeting moment of connection, a wave of heat spiraled down my spine. He remained still. I held my ground, refusing to say the words that hung heavy in the air. As darkness enveloped the night, the power suddenly vanished. Some fuse issue, my husband muttered, his voice barely rising above the tension in the air. He stepped into the darkness, flashlight in hand, grumbling about the ancient wiring and the looming storms. Perched on the bed's edge, shrouded in near darkness, suddenly he emerged in the doorway. He stood barefoot, clad in a simple t-shirt and loose-fitting pants, ready for whatever lay ahead. The hallway's light sliced through the darkness, illuminating the edge of his face while the rest remained cloaked in shadow. Silence enveloped us. He stood in the doorway, exuding an air of belonging, as if time itself had paused in anticipation. I rose gradually, my body feeling foreign and unsteady beneath me. Every step I took toward him felt as if it were taken by a stranger. Yet, I seized them regardless. As I approached him, an invisible barrier held us apart. We were never obligated to. Our breaths synchronized, shallow yet deliberate. The scent of rain clung to him, his warmth tantalizingly close, just inches away from my own. My husband's voice echoed from the depths of the house. A mystery lingers around the breaker. We shattered before we ever had the chance to unite. The moment lingered, its essence refusing to fade away. That night, I lay in bed with my husband beside me, the rain drumming a steady rhythm outside. I listened intently to the soft wheeze of his breath, the stillness enveloping us like a cocoon, each sound amplifying the tension in the air. Yet, my thoughts drifted far away. It lingered in the space between heartbeats, in the inches that still separated us upstairs, in the silence of a threshold not yet crossed but already behind me. In that moment, I realized it was more than mere temptation. This was the spark that ignited everything. Yet a part of me hesitated, reluctant to bring it to an end. The rain clung to the night, spilling into the dawn, shrouding the lake house in a haunting veil of gray and green. The mist enveloped the trees and windows, shrouding every surface in a ghostly embrace, as if the very world had been swathed in delicate gauze. Barefoot by the kitchen sink, I clutched a steaming cup of black coffee, my gaze fixed on the droplets that trickled down the glass, each one a moment suspended in time. Each one treaded its own path, filled with hesitation and uncertainty, mirroring my own journey. I woke before either of them, restless in the bed that had once felt like home, but now felt like a cage. My husband's hands were clean of blame. He was innocent, caught in a web of misunderstanding. Yet, perhaps that was the very issue at hand. He stood there, innocent and untouched by guilt, as the world around him spun in chaos. Not at all. As I lay beside him that night, the steady rhythm of his breath filled the silence, the faint whistle in his nose, a sound that once annoyed me, now deepening the haunting solitude that enveloped us. His body radiated warmth, his hand grazing mine in the shadows, yet an icy chill coursed through me. I averted my gaze, yearning for sleep, as one longs for forgiveness, an ache filled with hope yet shadowed by the weight of doubt. As the floor creaked ominously above, I remained frozen in place. The unmistakable rhythm of footsteps echoed in the silence, each step slower and heavier, signaling his approach. He stood at the threshold, the kitchen just beyond his reach. Not just yet. I felt his presence close, a shadow hovering at the edge of my awareness, honoring the space I hadn't requested, yet silently yearning for me to bridge the gap. And I yearned too. A long dormant part of me now stirred with relentless urgency, every sensation sharpened, the humid air wrapping around me like a second skin. My shirt clung uncomfortably, the elastic of my underwear digging in at the waist, a constant reminder of my presence. I stretched to grasp something high on the shelf, feeling each movement with heightened awareness. It was something deeper. A resurgence was unfolding. After breakfast, my husband proposed the familiar routine, Endless repairs, relentless chores, and the weight of busy work loomed over him like a storm cloud, threatening to drown out any flicker of joy. He was in constant motion, perpetually repairing, tirelessly upholding the facade of normalcy, as if a spotless gutter or a neatly arranged toolbox could somehow bind a marriage in place. I consented, driven by routine, weighed down by guilt, and bound by a sense of obligation that had long lost its honor. When the younger one proposed a trip to town for new paint for the back porch, I jumped at the chance without a moment's thought. "It'll be faster with 2 people, he said, his gaze fixed on the weathered railing outside, as if the answer lay hidden in its splintered wood. "And you know how he disappears into the depths of the hardware store?" My husband let out a soft chuckle, a wave of his hand sending us on our way. "Take the SUV. It's yours for the taking." The drive into town was enveloped in a silence that pulsed with unspoken tension. The air was thick, heavy with unspoken words. Words drifted like leaves in the wind, fleeting exchanges about the towering trees, the roughness of the road, and the soft melodies spilling from the radio. Yet none of it held any significance. The space between us felt electric, a palpable tension hanging in the air. His hand hovered near the gear shift, while mine remained tightly clenched in my lap, a silent battle of restraint. The town lay quiet, a slumbering entity, its essence known to all. We pulled into a corner store, the air thick with anticipation, to gather our arsenal, brushes, tape, and vibrant cans of paint. He bore the weight of the world alone, a figure of strength and resilience, his shirt clinging to him from the persistent drizzle that whispered around him. I observed him hoist the boxes into the trunk, the sinewy muscles in his arms flexing beneath the fabric. "Is this truly only about paint?" I asked abruptly, my voice dropping to a whisper I hadn't intended. He faced me. "No," he replied, his voice steady. "But this is where we find ourselves." It was raw, unfiltered truth. Nothing more, nothing less. A sudden tightness gripped my chest, catching me off guard. The road wound back, curving around the shimmering lake, while trees arched above, creating a lush green tunnel that beckoned with mystery. Golden light streamed through, casting a warm glow that danced across the windshield. I reached for the sun visor, my hand slipping between us, brushing dangerously close to his. Neither of us stirred, caught in a tense standoff. The silence thickened, wrapping around them like a warm embrace, intimate and profound. My breath hitched, and I couldn't help but steal glances at his profile, captivated by its strength, the quiet restraint it exuded, and the way his jaw clenched when he drifted into thought. I yearned to speak, to break the silence, but all I could do was lay my hand softly over his. It wasn't a daring gesture, hardly a gesture at all. Yet he turned his hand over with deliberate slowness and entwined his fingers with mine. The warmth of his skin radiated against mine, while the texture of his palm sent shivers down my spine. No one had laid a hand on me like that in years, not with such raw simplicity, such undeniable presence. My heart raced uncontrollably, and I pulled away after mere seconds, yet the feeling lingered, haunting me throughout the drive home. Upon our return, an eerie silence enveloped the house. My husband slipped into the shed, intent on mending the broken window latch. As I arranged the groceries, each can found its place on the shelf, one by one, despite the knowledge that the order held no significance. He stepped into the kitchen, pausing in the doorway, tension crackling in the air. "I'll begin with the porch," he declared, his voice steady, no need to hurry. He averted his gaze, just enough to keep me guessing. Yet I understood his unspoken words. I nodded, my fingers tightly gripping the jar, reluctant to let it go. My heart raced, echoing in my ears. The air between us grew heavy once more. As the afternoon waned, I ascended the stairs, solitude enveloping me. I had to strip away the layers, to cleanse my skin, to inhale deeply once more. In the seclusion of the guest bathroom, I pressed my back against the sink, staring intently at my reflection. The mirror shimmered with a thin veil of fog, a ghostly reflection of the heat that enveloped the room. I wiped it clean and stared, the silence thick around me. A chill clung to my collarbone, the fabric of my blouse damp against my skin. With deliberate slowness, I unbuttoned it, my gaze fixed on my own hands. The lace of my soft lavender bra, picked without a second thought this morning, now felt like a whispered secret waiting to be unveiled. I removed it, swapping it for a new one, the anticipation crackling in the air. Darkness enveloped everything. Still warm, darkness enveloped everything. Concise, streamlined. It wasn't a decision made with intention. It was a desperate need to escape the ordinary and embrace the unknown. In pursuit, awakened. His voice echoed from downstairs. Not the words, only the pulse. I was drawn in, captivated by his words, longing for more, even if I didn't understand them. In that moment, I understood how effortlessly I had fallen into a spiral of thought, of yearning, of delicate rituals that felt foreign to a woman in a secure marriage. These were the habits of someone poised on the edge of anticipation, waiting for something more. The mask had slipped away and the truth stood bare before me. I was getting ready, but the most devastating revelation? I felt no shame. Life surged through me. Silence enveloped us that night. At dinner, we occupied our familiar spots, my husband unaware of the charged glances exchanged, the space between me and the man across the table, heavy with unspoken tension. As I slipped beneath the covers, I remained fully dressed, the weight of the day still clinging to me. The window stood ajar, inviting the unknown in. The trees danced in the wind, their whispers mingling with the haunting hum of night insects. I lay awake, refusing to surrender to sleep. Something had shattered within me, unleashing a torrent of emotions. And the moment had passed, the door now irrevocably ajar. I stirred in the darkness, wide awake, even though sleep had eluded me. The sheets clung to me, damp and twisted, a testament to a night consumed by restless thoughts. The space beside me was hauntingly vacant. Faint footsteps echoed from downstairs, accompanied by the familiar morning symphony of cupboards creaking open, drawers whispering shut, and the kettle's low, steady hum rising in the air. I lingered in bed, the weight of my body pressing down, yet an electric tension coursed through me, elusive and unsettling. The unspoken words and unfinished actions pressed against my chest, a relentless tide that surged and swelled, refusing to ebb away. My hand pressed gently against my stomach, seeking to quell the rising tide of unease. Yet it was not discomfort that stirred within me. A thrill of expectation hung in the air. As I finally rose, I navigated my morning routine like an actor preparing for a role shrouded in mystery. I slipped into a sleek black dress, its simplicity belying the way it clung to my form, the neckline daringly low enough to keep me acutely aware of my every move. Beneath it all, I donned a soft charcoal gray lingerie, a daring choice made in a fleeting moment of courage, now finally unveiled on this trip. The fabric wrapped around me, anchoring my senses, heightening my awareness with each breath, each subtle shift. The morning air hung heavy with silence as breakfast unfolded. My husband hunched over the table, his eyes glued to the screen, a half-empty mug clutched tightly in his hand. I poured the coffee, took a seat beside him, and let the silence envelop us. He spoke to me in his usual calm, pragmatic manner, inquiring if I wanted to assist with replanting the garden beds later, pondering whether we should clear out the boathouse before the weather turned. I nodded, offered gentle replies, and smiled at just the right moments. He remained oblivious to the way my fingers clenched the cup, a silent storm brewing within me. As the sun climbed higher, he set off to see the neighbors across the lake, old friends who never failed to draw him in with their engaging talks of politics, the shifting weather, and the endless cycle of repairs. He leaned closer and asked if I wanted to join him. I turned them down softly. "Take the afternoon," he urged, his voice low and compelling. "Take a moment to catch your breath." For the first time in days, silence enveloped the house. I lingered in the living room, my gaze lost in the void, consumed by the silence around me. The shadows twisted and turned, a silent witness to our arrival. The light streaming through the windows transformed, softer and more golden, as if it whispered a hidden secret waiting to be uncovered. The sun's heat enveloped my arms, seeping through the fabric of my dress, granting me a sense of freedom as it soaked into my skin. He discovered me lurking in the shadows outside. The back screen door whispered open, and I felt the quiet weight of his footsteps pressing into the grass. I kept my back to them, perched on the low stone wall bordering the garden. I felt the coolness of the surface beneath my hands. My gaze locked onto the shimmering water. A distant glimmer beckoned, small waves dancing in the light like a heartbeat. He edged nearer, silence hanging heavily between them. A shiver ran down my spine. I could feel his gaze piercing through me, even without turning to see, not as a man gazes at a woman he longs for, but as one beholds something that ignites an unquenchable fire within. "Are you all right?" he whispered softly. I faced him. All my defenses had crumbled away. No, I insisted. It was the most profound truth I had dared to utter in years. He lingered beside me, a silent presence, neither touching nor pushing, just existing in the moment. His presence was a tantalizing torment, wrapped in an unbearable softness. My fingers trembled with an icy grip on my lap, even as the sun blazed overhead. I didn't want this, I insisted, yet even as the words left my lips, uncertainty gnawed at me, leaving me questioning what this truly was. His silence spoke volumes. A presence felt even in the void of words. It was an undeniable presence. It was eavesdropping. I faced him. Our faces hovered inches apart, silence thickening the air between us. There was no graceful exit, no sanctuary to be found. Only we remain, caught in the delicate balance between what was and what must come. In that electrifying moment, our lips met. It was anything but soft. It was no hesitation. It was a surrender, swift and consuming, ignited by days of restraint and a lingering silent ache. My hands rested on his shoulders, and his arms gently guided me. His fingers brushed the fabric of my dress, and a sudden tension filled the space between us. Our lips met, and though the moment felt inevitable, its true meaning eluded us. Yet, as it concluded, we remained still. We huddled together, foreheads almost brushing, eyes shut tight. The wind whispered through the towering trees, weaving a melody of birdsong and the earthy aroma of damp pine into the air. I expected to be consumed by guilt, to be weighed down by shame. Yet, what washed over me was a profound clarity. Only emptiness, no solace. A piercing realization struck me. Everything was about to change, and deep down, I had yearned for this moment. Silence enveloped us as we stepped back inside, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. I could see it in his eyes, the unspoken truth lingering in the air. I had known all along. His silence had unraveled, revealing its hidden truths. It was a revelation. The afternoon unfolded in an eerie tranquility, each step through the house feeling like a journey into a stranger's world. With a sense of urgency, I pried open long-forgotten drawers, dust swirling in the air like memories. I smoothed the blankets on the guest bed, each crease telling a story, and rearranged a vase of wildflowers by the window, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the shadows of the past. Each movement resonated as a tribute, a farewell to the life I once knew, and the one slipping through my fingers. When my husband returned later, a bright smile lit up his face. He recounted tales of the neighbor's new puppy, the rich wine they had uncorked, and the curious story of a sailboat ensnared in the weeds. He remained oblivious to the tightness coiling in my shoulders, to the way I flinched at his attempt to sweep my hair aside. His lips brushed against my cheek, a fleeting warmth before he ascended the stairs, the sound of water soon to follow. In the dim hallway, I pressed my palm against the cool wall, my heart pounding fiercely, a hidden truth yearning to break free. Under the cloak of darkness, he schemed a surprise dinner. He cooked, an unusual occurrence, transforming the ordinary into something special. The table was set with flickering candles, and the linen napkins reserved for holidays were carefully unfolded from their drawer, hinting at a night filled with promise. He fought against the odds. I witnessed that moment unfold. Perhaps he felt a shift in the air, or maybe he was just chasing shadows of a past we had both abandoned. The dinner hung heavy in the air, a mix of kindness and quiet despair, as an undeniable truth settled in my heart. I couldn't bear his touch that night. Or maybe never again. Not due to his failure, but because another had touched a part of me I thought was long dead. As he drifted into slumber, I quietly slipped from the warmth of the bed and positioned myself by the window, heart racing. The lake glimmered, a silvery sheen under the watchful eye of the moon. Silence enveloped me as I stood there, arms tightly wrapped around myself, still clad in the lingerie that had clung to me all day. I held back the tears. I remained still. The stars shimmered in the dark water, their reflections dancing like whispers of danger. I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the calm surface something lurked, waiting. As dawn broke, I lay in bed, my body heavy and unwilling to stir. It felt as though it understood that awakening meant confronting the unspoken burdens of choices lingering in the shadows of my mind. The air hung heavy in the room, thick with the weight of uncirculated memories. I sat up slowly, my fingers gliding over my thighs, trying to anchor myself in the moment. Yet my thoughts lingered, ensnared in the memory of yesterday's kiss, and the haunting silence that ensued. Silence enveloped the house once more. The void left by my husband's absence had become a haunting silence, barely acknowledged yet ever present. He frequently slipped away at dawn, drawn to his small projects, his toolbox, and the weekend lists that had become his refuge, filling the void I had left behind. As I slipped into a long cardigan over my nightgown, I made my way down the stairs, the faint hum of a radio drifting from the shed, beckoning me closer. He stood in the open air. For now, I could avoid him, at least for a little while longer. The kitchen was thick with the lingering scent of last night's wine, intertwined with whispers of garlic, lemon, and the ghost of melted wax. He had fought against the odds. The table remained untouched, a solitary plate lingering in silence, a crumpled napkin bearing the imprint of my grip as I listened to his tale of the retirement party. A smile crossed my lips. I nodded, a silent agreement hanging in the air. A laugh had slipped from my throat, an alien sound that felt utterly strange and foreign. He remained oblivious to the subtle retreat of my hand as his fingers grazed my skin. Or perhaps he had seen it and deliberately turned a blind eye. I brewed tea instead of coffee, choosing something gentler, something free of bitterness. I perched by the window in the dim back room, gazing out at the trees that stood sentinel along the path to the water. The day radiated warmth, the air alive with the tantalizing promise of summer. The leaves outside danced in the gentle breeze, casting shifting shadows on the floor, creating a mesmerizing, unpredictable rhythm. His presence loomed, unseen yet palpable, a silence that resonated with a weight I hadn't felt in years. I convinced myself it was for the best, that we both required space to exhale, to allow the weight of our shared history to find a place that felt bearable. Yet, the reality was that the waiting consumed me, pulling me under like a relentless tide. I had to see him, not to speak, not to touch, but just to confirm he hadn't disappeared from the world we had forged together in that fleeting, unforgettable instant. Footsteps echoed on the stairs, breaking the silence of the nearly noon hour. Soft yet intentional, I remained in my seat, my gaze locked onto the trees. The air crackled with an unmistakable tension as he stepped into the room, and though I didn't turn, I felt his presence wash over me like a storm brewing on the horizon. Silence enveloped him as he held back his words. He approached the counter, filled a glass with water, and lingered in the stillness. I observed his reflection in the glass, the tautness in his shoulders, the deliberate manner in which he set the glass down. His movements betrayed nothing of that kiss. No thrill, no wild abandon, no hint of pride. No hint of pride. A profound silence enveloped the air, on the edge of anticipation. At last, he pivoted. "I've been thinking," he murmured, his voice a low, steady whisper. I allowed him to voice his thoughts. I remained silent. "This can't go any further," he declared, his voice heavy with finality. "I can't bear the thought of causing him pain. I can't bear to shatter what you share with him, whatever it may be." A chilling sensation coursed through me, like icy water gliding beneath my skin. I remained still, my exterior betraying nothing, and yet he pressed on, unable to deny the truth of what had transpired. I refused to let it happen again. The truth lay before her, tightly bound in layers of restraint. A confession, restrained yet piercing, dances on the edge of passion, revealing a truth that cuts deep. I remained silent. I wasn't prepared for this moment. I rose and slipped out of the room, my footsteps silent as I ascended to the upstairs bathroom. With a click, I locked the door behind me and pressed my back against it, surrendering to the heavy silence that enveloped me, stretching on for what felt like an eternity. As the afternoon light faded, I drifted aimlessly through the house, each room a silent witness to my restless search for meaning. I wiped a shelf that was already pristine, shifted books on the coffee table, and opened and closed drawers, savoring the sensation of their movement. As I walked past the guest bedroom, his room, a wave of uncertainty washed over me. The door creaked open just a fraction. Inside, the bed lay perfectly made, the window ajar, the curtain dancing softly with every whisper of the breeze. As I entered, an unseen force tugged at me, beckoning with an allure I couldn't quite grasp. A jacket lay abandoned on the chair by the closet, its presence a silent whisper of untold stories. My fingers glided over the fabric, a whisper of his scent lingering, wood, soap, and an elusive note I couldn't quite place. Only the essence of skin, intertwined with the passage of time. Perched on the bed's edge, I clenched my hands in my lap, my gaze fixed on the floor, lost in thought. I held back the tears. The urge never even flickered within me. Yet, a profound emptiness lingered in my chest, as if something vital had been extracted, leaving a void that had yet to heal. That night, we gathered once more around the dinner table. My husband radiated joy. He hinted at prolonging the journey, of completing the deck, of welcoming old friends for a weekend reunion. I offered a smile at the right moment, handed him the bread, and inquired about the forecast. I stepped into the role I had perfected over countless rehearsals, yet with each gesture, I drifted further away from who I truly was. He sat there, his eyes averted, refusing to meet my stare, not with a chill, nor with fury, but with a struggle that hurt deeper than any denial. In those silences, we were crafting something profound. Not distance, but peril. Every glance we held back, every word left unspoken. It all deepened the burden of the unutterable. The more we tried to escape it, the more deafening it grew. As the night deepened and I shed my clothes, my gaze fell upon the mirror, revealing a haunting reflection. The very same lingerie as yesterday. It wrapped around me like a haunting echo, a reminder rather than a yearning. With deliberate care, I peeled it away, each layer revealing a version of myself that had long since become obsolete. I slipped into an old cotton nightgown, the fabric whispering secrets of the past as it enveloped me. A gentle embrace, a sanctuary of comfort. As I quietly slipped into bed, I noticed my husband was already lost in the depths of sleep. I switched off the lamp and curled onto my side, my eyes wide open, observing the darkness as it twisted and settled in the room. In the depths of slumber, his hand grazed my hip, a fleeting touch that sent shivers through the night. I stood my ground, unyielding. Silence enveloped me, a heavy shroud that stifled any words that might have escaped my lips. Yet, I remained rooted in place. The night wrapped around them like a warm embrace, the trees whispering secrets they were bound to keep. Deep within my chest, a subtle ache began to stir. It wasn't loss that struck me, but the gradual realization that I could no longer pretend to inhabit a life that had slipped away from me. The silence had become a familiar shroud, wrapping around us like a fog. Once, we danced to the same rhythms, but now we drifted through the same rooms, mere shadows of our former selves. That morning, everything felt different, heavier, as if the air had thickened overnight, and I was the only one aware of it. The light outside pierced through the gloom, crisp and unyielding, a revelation after days of darkness. I opened the bedroom window, standing there as the air rushed over my skin, yet it offered no comfort. It served as a stark reminder that I remained, trapped in a narrative that had spiraled beyond my grasp. Downstairs, my husband's soft hum echoed through the air, a haunting melody that beckoned me closer, an extraordinary rarity. His voice dripped with a low, tuneless hum, yet it carried a sense of deep contentment. The cadence of his footsteps echoed in the air, mingling with the soft scrape of a pan on the stove and the sharp clink of a fork against a bowl, creating a symphony of domestic life. The familiarity of it should have wrapped around her like a warm blanket. It was not. As I stepped into the kitchen, his smile met me, a spark igniting the air between us. "Look what I found," he said, his voice low and filled with intrigue as he held up a silver lighter, its surface gleaming under the dim light. "It doesn't belong to me. I discovered it hidden in the back seat of the car while shifting the fishing gear." An almost imperceptible shift stirred within my chest, a sensation that whispered before my mind could grasp it. A knot formed in my stomach. I held my expression steady. Could it be one of the neighbors? I extended my hand. My voice remained steady, yet my throat felt parched. He shrugged, a flicker of indifference crossing his face. "It might just be." He placed it on the counter, a silence enveloping the moment, never to speak of it again. Yet I recognized that gaze. His gaze held, a heartbeat stretched into eternity. He spun away, feigning indifference as if the topic had vanished into thin air. It was how people meticulously organized the shadows they dared not face. I had experienced it far too often to ignore the signs. He slipped away after breakfast, promising he'd be gone for most of the day, fixing the boats at the dock, perhaps sharing a meal with a local in town. I pressed my lips to his cheek, a gesture so familiar it felt instinctive. My lips grazed his skin, a whisper of contact that sent shivers through the air. Suddenly, solitude enveloped me. The younger man had vanished without a trace, leaving me in a swirl of uncertainty. Silence enveloped the room, a hollow void where memories once lingered. He was nowhere to be found, in the shed by the lake or along the path we often strolled. His absence pierced through the silence, leaving a wound that throbbed with an intensity that felt almost unbearable. It carried a weight of purpose, a shield against the unknown. There was no blame in my heart. Uncertainty gripped me at the thought of facing him once more. What words could possibly bridge the chasm between us? Words faded into the background, overtaken by fleeting glances, lingering hesitations, and the delicate dance of evasion. I drifted through the house, lost in a haze of uncertainty. My body surged forward, yet my mind remained captive to that haunting image. The lighter rested on the counter, his hand gripping it tightly, a heavy silence hanging between his words. As the sun dipped low in the sky, the unmistakable sound of the front door creaking open echoed through the house. I remained frozen in place. In the sunroom, I lingered, enveloped by the lingering aroma of cut flowers and the gentle creak of the wicker chair beneath me. He slipped inside, barely making a sound. Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. The tension was palpable, as if the world held its breath, waiting for the next move. Shadows danced in the corners, whispering secrets of what was to come. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum, urging the story forward into the unknown. Only existence. I tilted my head just enough to recognize him. He lingered in the doorway, a shadow of doubt flickering across his face, unsure if he truly belonged there. "I have to leave," he stated, his voice steady. I nodded, my gaze averted, avoiding his eyes. "I understand." He entered the room, floorboards groaning underfoot, the air thick with unspoken words, a tension that crackled like electricity. "He senses it," I murmured. "I see," he responded. We slipped into silence once more, yet this time it carried a weight that drew us closer. It was a deep sorrow, a shared ache between two souls, mourning a future they never intended to desire. I rose and moved past him, neither hurrying nor extending my hand. I held my breath, paralyzed by fear. As I ascended the stairs, I gently shut the door, sealing myself away from the world beyond. Perched on the bed's edge, I fixated on my hands, lost in thought. In this light, they appeared aged, veins standing out starkly, skin stretched and fragile. Yet, in recent days, they had encountered experiences that reignited a youthful spark within them, ravenous. I should have packed. The weight of my oversight hung heavy in the air, a silent reminder of the choices I failed to make. Regret washed over me like a tidal wave. I should have planned. A choice should have been made. Instead, I yanked open the nightstand drawer, my fingers trembling as I retrieved a pen and paper, refrained from penning a letter. Not just yet. To bear the burden of etching words on a page while your own existence began to fade into obscurity. His footsteps were silent as he ascended the stairs, leaving me unaware of his presence. Silence enveloped the room, and then, without warning, the door creaked open, yet I remained oblivious to its intrusion. But when I glanced up, he loomed just inside the room, his expression a complete enigma. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he declared. The words fell heavy, crashing between us like stones. I asked, hoping for a positive answer. He gave a slight nod, a silent agreement hanging in the air. A heavy silence hung in the air. Not awkward, but painfully intense. "I don't want you to," I whispered, my voice barely a breath. "I know," he replied, his voice steady. "Yet I must. I am an outsider in this place. I never did." I rose to my feet. She approached him, each step deliberate and measured. My hands shook with anticipation as I drew closer to his face. He remained still, a statue in the shadows. My fingers glided along his jawline, descending to his chest. His heart thudded under my palm, a secret yearning to be remembered. Our lips never met. We stood apart, the distance between us heavy with unspoken words. We stood frozen, two souls in a house, stripped of its warmth, enveloped by a silence that echoed the unspoken truths we feared to confront. Under the cloak of night, I stepped onto the porch beside my husband. The sky stretched wide and clear, an endless expanse of blue that beckoned adventure. The stars above the lake pierced the night, a vast and unending tapestry of brilliance. He filled 2 glasses with wine, and we settled into a silence that only those who have shared a lifetime together can truly grasp. He shared visions of autumn adventures, winter celebrations, and the long overdue restoration of the boat that had languished in silence for far too long. I nodded, a smile flickering across my lips, my words barely escaping into the air. The glass trembled in my grip. The wine touched my lips, its rich flavor unfolding like a secret waiting to be discovered. The trees loomed tall. The stars sparkled above, and his laughter lit up his eyes, crinkling with joy. I witnessed everything. Yet, beneath the surface, I found myself in another realm entirely. It wasn't him I was grappling with, nor the one who was walking away. It was the undeniable part of me that I could no longer suppress. The woman who had existed in silence, who had followed the rules for far too long. That night, as I slipped under the covers next to my husband, I sensed his hand seeking mine once more. His hand lingered momentarily on my waist, sending a jolt of electricity through me. I stood my ground, unyielding. Silence enveloped me, a heavy weight pressing down as I chose not to reply. Yet, my eyes remained wide open, even after his had surrendered to the darkness. A fire ignited within my chest. Not with remorse, not even with despair. Not even with despair. Yet, like a truth that demanded to be faced, it loomed closer, unavoidable, and relentless. I stirred awake before he did. My body glided through the shadows, each movement purposeful and precise. I crept out of bed, mindful of the heavy embrace of his arms sprawled across the sheets. It had lost its intimacy, becoming merely a routine, like a familiar piece of furniture you navigate without thought. I slipped into a silk camisole and draped a cardigan over my shoulders, not from the chill in the air, but because my skin tingled with a vulnerability that had nothing to do with the temperature. I crept into the kitchen, shrouded in darkness, each step a whisper in the stillness. The early morning hung heavy with deep blue shadows, cloaking the world in mystery. I stood by the window, captivated as the sky transformed, gently peeling away the layers of night. The silhouettes of trees grew more defined with each fleeting moment, as the world around me started to regain its essence. In that clarity, a disquieting sensation emerged, as if the edges and definitions had returned with a haunting precision. The light inched closer to the house, and with each passing moment, the facade of pretense grew more fragile. He was walking away. The thought spiraled endlessly in my mind, a relentless echo, neither a question nor a statement, only heartbeat. He was walking away. I brewed tea, allowing the ritual to anchor me in the moment. Water bubbles furiously. Leaves surrender their essence, and the spoon glides softly against the cup's edge, releasing a symphony of flavors. I cradled it in my hands, feeling the warmth seep into my skin. The house groaned softly, echoing the fatigue of our unspoken words. I was unaware of the moment he descended the stairs. The soft scuff of his steps reached my ears, yet I remained still, refusing to turn. I was unable to do it. His mere presence unraveled me completely. Silence hung in the air as he remained still, his lips sealed tight. He lingered by the door, his gaze fixed on me from afar. His gaze swept through the room, lingering on my shoulders, halting at the spots that still held his memory. After breakfast, he announced he was packing. I nodded slowly, my gaze fixed elsewhere, my throat constricted, burdened by a weight too ancient to be labeled sorrow and too intimate to be deemed fear. Are you really leaving without sharing a meal? Perhaps it's best if I refrain. I felt a desperate urge to plead with him to stay. I felt the urge to let out a primal scream. Yet a heavy burden settled in my chest, silencing my words as if they were stones sinking in water. I was trapped beneath the depths, unable to break free. He stepped out of the room, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving an echo of silence in his wake. I lost track of what was happening. Then I caught the unmistakable sound of drawers sliding open, the sharp zip of a suitcase being closed, followed by the dull thud of something being dropped and hastily picked up again. He meticulously folded his clothes, just as he always had, each crease a testament to his careful nature. His fingers hovered over the edge of the nightstand, a fleeting touch that could either linger in the air or vanish into the shadows. I questioned whether he would seize it all or spare something in the end. A toothbrush lay abandoned, a lone sock crumpled nearby, and an elusive scent lingered in the air, weaving a tale of forgotten moments. As the clock ticked towards noon, I ascended the stairs at last. My feet surged forward, defying my will. The door to his room stood ajar, a silent invitation to the unknown. Sunlight sliced through the curtains, casting golden stripes that danced across the bed. The bag loomed by the wall, sealed tight, holding secrets within. He perched on the bed's edge, his gaze locked onto the floor, lost in thought. As he lifted his gaze, his eyes revealed a weariness, yet they held a weariness, steadiness. "I don't want to go," he whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence. "I understand," I replied. My voice barely escaped my lips. He rose and approached me deliberately, as if gauging the delicate tension that hung in the air between us. As he approached, his hands remained still, never making contact. He lingered near, his breath warm against my cheek, igniting a spark of tension in the air. "Speak," he urged. "I don't know how to ask you to stay," I whispered, my voice barely breaking the silence that hung between us. His gaze fell downward. The moment his body shifted, I sensed it. A silent surrender, the kind that comes when a person relinquishes a battle they never wished to fight. "I'll think about you," he whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence. It's not just a promise. It's an undeniable truth. In that electrifying moment, his lips brushed against mine. This time felt unlike any other, a haunting slowness that wrapped around the moment, devoid of desperation or urgency, like a fleeting memory, born in the moment yet vanishing even as it takes shape. His lips brushed against mine, soft and tentative, while his hands hovered gently at my waist, as if he feared I might shatter at any moment. I kept my eyes shut tight as he withdrew. I longed to hold on to that memory of him, intimate, vivid, and beautifully imperfect. By the time the sun reached its zenith, he had vanished. Silence hung in the air, a void left by his absence. No farewell, no words to bridge the chasm between us. The car engine hummed softly, the gravel crunching beneath the tires, a haunting melody in the stillness. And then silence fell. I held back the tears. I lingered in the hallway by the front door, fixated on the spot where he had been just hours ago. Moments later, my husband burst through the door, bags in hand, his voice echoing from the kitchen as he called my name. I responded instinctively, rising to my feet, snatching the bags from his grasp, and remarked on the tomatoes' unsettling softness. I flashed a smile at just the right moments. I followed every rule, every instruction, every expectation laid before me. As the evening unfolded, we gathered by the flickering fireplace, the wine flowing freely, and the logs crackling with life. He grasped my hand, and I surrendered to his touch. His thumb glided deliberately over my knuckles, and in that moment, I sensed the heavy burden of time itself. Of celebrations, cherished moments, intimate gatherings, and the passage of time. Yet, the void I sensed was not solely the departure of the man, but the haunting absence of my own essence, of the woman I had briefly become, hidden away in shadows, a woman who exhaled defiance into the world. As night fell, I slipped beneath the covers, surrendering to the embrace of sleep far earlier than usual. He lingered in the shadows of the dimly lit room, lost in the pages of his book, the world outside fading away. As I faced the mirror, I began to unpin my hair, each strand cascading down my shoulders like a waterfall, a moment suspended in time. My reflection stared back, an unspoken question lingering in the air, one I was unprepared to confront. Buried in the drawer, the lavender lingerie lay untouched, a relic from the early days of the trip, whispering secrets of forgotten moments. I brushed my fingers over the delicate lace, then swiftly shut the drawer once more. I slipped under the covers, my gaze fixed on the ceiling above. Silence enveloped the house, a stillness that felt almost alive. As my husband flipped the page of his book downstairs, a distant car glided along an empty road, taking with it a fragment of myself I had only just started to uncover. The morning after his departure hung heavy in the air, a stillness that whispered of change. The toast lay invitingly on the table, the coffee brewed and steaming in the pot. The familiar creak of floorboards echoed beneath each step, while the wind whispered through the trees just beyond the window. My husband sat across from me, his brow slightly furrowed as he scanned the newspaper, murmuring about politics, the weather, or the neighbor's broken fence, lost in a world of his own. I nodded at all the crucial moments. For a fleeting moment, a smile broke through. Yet the stillness within me had shifted, no longer resembling what it once was. The stillness had transformed, no longer a mere pause of anticipation. The silence hung heavy in the air, a haunting echo of what had just transpired. The steam spiraled from my cup, twisting and curling before vanishing into the air, leaving only a whisper of warmth behind. It brought him to mind how something could blaze so fiercely and then vanish without a whisper. He hadn't truly departed. Remnants of him lingered. A toothbrush, a pair of socks, a book marked by a folded page. Yet the presence, the crackling electricity, the heavy sensation of being observed, had faded away. Or perhaps I had concealed it, buried so deep that I could continue to function, to push ahead without showing any signs of unraveling. Words eluded me that day. My husband noticed, yet it was in a way that felt utterly insignificant. He leaned closer, his voice low and urgent, asking if I was weary, if I craved anything at all. I refused. I insisted I was okay. He embraced it, just as he did with most things, as if the minor aches were inevitable companions of growing older. Yet, it wasn't fatigue that silenced me. The moment struck me. I had existed in two parallel lives, and now, one had abruptly faded away, leaving no trace of its passing. I moved through my tasks as if performing an ancient ritual, each action steeped in purpose and intensity. With each fold of the laundry, I felt the weight of the day lift. The dishes found their place in the cabinet, a quiet order restored. As I swept the porch, the dust danced away, leaving behind a fresh canvas for the moments to come. With trembling hands, I carefully repotted the wilting plant on the windowsill, fighting against the odds to breathe life back into its fragile leaves. Every action was deliberate, infused with intention, as if the very cadence of daily life could stave off the encroachment of the past into the now. Yet, it bled. Not in overt displays, not through tears or revelations. The sound pierced through the silence as my gaze fixated on the vacant chair he once occupied. At the bottom of the staircase, I paused, straining to hear footsteps that would never echo through the silence. The choice of underwear beneath my jeans screamed of secrets, while my fingers brushed my wrist, lost in the memory of his touch lingering there. As the sun dipped low in the sky, I stepped into his room, the air thick with anticipation. The window stood ajar, curtains dancing in the whispering breeze. The bed was meticulously made, the blanket stretched taut over the mattress. Yet his scent lingered, faint but undeniably present. Perched on the edge of the bed, I clasped my hands tightly in my lap, lost in thought, time slipping away around me. Questions swirled in my mind, haunting echoes of what could have been. Should I have begged him to stay? Should I have walked away with him? Yet, each thought slipped through my fingers, unreal and intangible. They were the dreams we conjured in the aftermath, safe rebellions that lingered in the shadows of our minds. The truth lay bare, stark, and merciless. Once more, I found myself trapped in this existence, a choice made in silence. As my husband searched for me, I calmly replied that I was busy sorting through the linens. With a warm smile, he patted my shoulder and said he'd be outside, tending to the gate. In an instant, the moment slipped away, leaving no trace behind. That evening I prepared dinner, something uncomplicated, yet comforting. He praised the seasoning, then leaned in closer, his eyes sparkling with mischief as he asked if I wanted to share a moment together later, perhaps lost in a world on screen. I agreed, fully aware that I would not follow through. I craved the framework, not the closeness. I had to immerse myself in the role, clinging to the hope that reality might return, if only for a fleeting moment. Once he settled into sleep, I slipped back into the sunroom. I sat in the chair, where once I had gazed beyond mere trees. The sky loomed ominously, a shroud of darkness cloaking the faint stars hidden behind a delicate veil of clouds. I held back the tears. I remained silent. I sat in silence, absorbing the whispers of the night, the rhythm of my breath, and the restless part of me that would not be silenced. I considered him now, not as I once did, devoid of the familiar ache of longing or the insatiable hunger for touch. In his presence, I had transformed. I had leaned in, fully engaged, laughter spilling from my lips without a glance around the room. I had dared to touch his face, not from obligation, but from a deep, undeniable connection. Her absence weighed heavily on me, and I questioned whether she could truly belong in this life, tangled in its relentless routines, roles, and expectations. Yet, I realized she had been real, if only for a fleeting moment, and that truth was etched in my mind forever. Finally, I ascended the stairs. My husband lay asleep, facing the wall, one hand draped over my side of the bed. I eased myself next to him, every movement deliberate, desperate to keep him asleep, to hold back the words swirling in my mind. In the suffocating darkness, I fixed my gaze on the ceiling, my mind racing. The silence enveloped the space once more, yet it felt transformed, light, almost liberating. The air hung heavy, vast and silent, yet within that stillness, I sensed a subtle change, a gentle release, a tender yielding. The tale had reached its end, yet the marriage remained, as did the life I had constructed. What had concluded was the narrative I had concealed, the fragment of myself I had revealed. If only for a fleeting instant. Perhaps that was sufficient, or perhaps it fell short. In that moment, I shut my eyes and surrendered to the silence, embracing it not as a punishment or a weight, but as a testament that even stillness could transform a life.